Hey guys, it's Alex and Dad from 7th Hour Films back again with Doctor Who Classic. Last time we finished up the 5th season with The Wheel in Space. What happened on those?
Well, they did, in fact, end up fighting the Cybermen and managed to thwart their plan, which seemed kind of confusing. The Cybermen had somehow sabotaged the space laser, but then got it back working, and I don't remember all the details of it. But then what's the girl's name?
Zoe
decides to stow away, I guess, on the TARDIS, and they discover her at the last minute.
Oh, yeah.
And she says, "No, I want to. I wasn't doing any good there on the Wheel in Space." And the Doctor said, "Yeah, you need to know what you're getting into." So started showing her scenes from Evil of the Daleks.
Yeah, kind of in a similar way to when we got Steven, because he just sort of got into the TARDIS without the Doctor and Vicky knowing, and then they found him later. Yeah. So yeah, we now have Zoe as our new companion. And that was pretty much it. It should be a while before we have another recon, like maybe a good 6-7 weeks maybe before we have a recon, and maybe a little bit of animated in there, but I'm not sure when that'll happen. This is the first episode of Season 6, and it's a complete episode, which means we can do a proper full-length episode for it. So at the beginning of every season, I make the full length for the first episode completely free for anyone, so you can go try that out. There's no show footage because I can't just give you the whole episode, so you can sync up your copy of this episode of Doctor Who to our footage. And yeah, this is actually the first time we're doing a good because I'm pretty sure the last ones have all been recons of some variety. So yeah, this time it's a complete episode that you can try out in full length. And if you like that, maybe you could sign up for full length full time. But you don't have to if you don't want to. And you also don't even have to try out the full length. If you don't even want to do that, you just wait 10 seconds, however long it takes us to talk, and we'll just start up the normal reaction. So,
if you notice him kind of babbling on and me not saying anything, you guys know I went into rehearsal about a month ago to my show. It opened last weekend. This weekend we have a Friday night, Saturday afternoon, Saturday night, and Sunday afternoon performances. So I'm kind of dragging. So he will be taking up a lot of the slack today because I'm kind of zoned out.
Yeah, it is 10:30 in the morning. So, which isn't in all respects, it's not too much earlier than we normally record, but it is earlier. So.
Gotta get my caffeine.
Yeah, definitely. I'm no stranger to that. So yeah, on this really nice full episode that you can watch full length, we'll be tired. So maybe someday we'll have the perfect full length available to everyone. Maybe. Yeah, maybe. Maybe someday.
I got one more year of teaching school, and then I'm going to retire probably, most likely. 99% sure. And not 100%, but yeah. And then this will be a lot easier for me.
Yeah. So, let's just go ahead and get into this episode of Doctor Who. Here we go.
It's called The Dominators?
Yes.
Oh. It's a space invasion.
Yeah. Talk about shoulder pads. Yeesh.
Very similar to the Superman movie, the people on Krypton.
Well,
It's suitable for our purpose. The planetary crust is thin here, and there's an intelligent form of life suitable for a workforce.
But the natives may not be suitable for slave labor. Suppose they're hostile.
If necessary, we shall destroy them.
Yes, destroy them.
But only if necessary.
I feel like we already have our theme for this episode. The shoulder pads did also kind of look like Time Lords.
If we'd used a travel capsule, we could have been here in a few minutes.
Not without a permit, you wouldn't.
Suppose that does add a little zest.
Well, here we are, everyone. The Island of Death.
Adventurous.
Uninhabited for 170 years. Nothing can live on this poisonous plot of soil.
You're being melodramatic again, Cully, as usual.
As was the designer of that costume.
Yeah.
To monitor the radiation.
Going out on that island without protective suits would be madness.
So we just have to take your word for it, Cully.
Yes, you do.
Didn't you mention something about a warning signal?
Yes, but we're in the radiation zone. Why?
Well, aren't we a bit close?
Do something, Cully! We're going to crash!
Quickly, Cully! Ah!
So that thing is a boat.
Of some kind, yes.
And they sailed all this way, but didn't bring protective suits.
All right, go out there. Get yourselves cooked to a frazzle by the radiation. But don't come complaining to me if you get yourselves killed, because I don't refund money to...
They wouldn't
Refund? What am I saying? They haven't even paid
come
me
back
yet.
if they
Hey,
were
wait.
killed.
No.
Talata, don't be a little fool. This island is a killer.
So you say, but your radiation counter didn't seem to be making too much of a fuss about it.
Yes, sir, I know.
There are just some people who should not wear
And all
sleeveless
the others
shirts.
in this tavern
Nah.
as well.
Oh no, they've been reconned. Took a sec for that sound to kick in.
Police box is looking a bit beat up.
Yeah. Doc might need to repaint it soon.
What are you laughing at? Oh, they're just dummies.
They look like it.
Dummies?
There's a Mesopotamian ziggurat.
No.
And this island was used to test an explosive device, the results of which can be seen today. Thereafter, all further research into this type of energy was prohibited, and the island kept as both a museum and warning for future generations.
Oh, well, she certainly does her homework. I see.
Like you would know about homework.
Then this is an atomic test
That's a
site.
very good point.
Yes, you see, students are...
This is the eastern drilling site.
You just have to walk past a strange...
What is that?
Yeah,
There we go.
Box-like structure.
it's hard to
Shall I
miss.
summon the quarks to destroy it?
You remember, I'm with the survey team. Survey? Right. Take me to your survey unit. Yes, but
Come on, don't argue.
Oh, very well. So over this way.
So the hostile guys, these are guys who are sucking up the radiation? Is that what I'm understanding?
Yes.
Must be.
Some sort of tracks.
So they are. Well, shall we?
Never a good idea, Doctor.
No.
Shall we destroy? Shall we destroy?
Well, it's another day where I'm glad we have subs. Because that is next to impossible to understand.
The quarks are not quite as menacing as I thought they would look.
Yeah, like, I was a little curious if, like, were they just saving the design for later, or they just didn't have a design so they didn't show them yet, but it's like, then you see that and it's like, oh, here's a box with some legs, and then it's got a little, like, little thing that comes out.
And the stuff on their heads look like flowers.
Yeah, that, maybe not their greatest design, especially for a big reveal like that.
And certainly not a very menacing voice.
Yeah, definitely. Well, it's also interesting because I guess the whole thing of like the arm that sort of comes out, like some of the droids like on Star Wars will have that, like R2 or Chopper or someone else.
Yeah.
But I don't know, just like the way that was just a solid, like a brick that just sort of swivels out seemed weird. Well, and the fact that they don't have any other arms aside from those, so...
Well, it's a good story. I mean,
Yeah.
And again, I love the way that they are integrating their indoor sets with the outdoor sets. Because, for example, when you saw Jamie and the Doctor running across the beach, or whatever that was there,
Yeah.
and then they cut to them coming up on the spacecraft, that was very well done. So,
Yeah.
again, the special effects are getting much, much better. Except so far for the quarks themselves that seriously do not look more menacing than, R2-D2.
Yeah. Well, and especially because we're just coming off of the Cybermen, too. I mean, maybe because there was potentially a season break, maybe there was like a month or two between last episode and this episode, but still, the Cybermen and the Daleks should still be fresh in everyone's minds, so to go to this is a little odd, but it's also interesting, I guess, that they sort of played up the reveal of the quarks.
Yeah.
When I'm more curious about who these aliens are with their giant shoulder pads and everything.
Now, again, they look menacing.
Yeah.
You know? And again, very reminiscent of the original Klingons and Romulans in the Star Trek series in the 1960s. You know, the very dark hair and dark circles under their eyes, and this incredibly stern look. So the aliens themselves are very menacing, but their destructive devices, it looks like something you would find in a toy store in the 1950s. Here's your wind-up robot. I will be destroying you. So.
Yeah. Well, it's also interesting that there's already a dynamic between the two, aliens that they have, where it's like, okay, so here's the one guy who is just military. Immediately, there's aliens, kill him. There's a ship, destroy it, all that. Whereas the other guy is more like, hey, wait, I know if it comes to that, it comes to that, but we need to think about this. We need to actually do our work here, and so it's already just an interesting thing just between the two of them.
And are they the only two? I mean, they're the only two we've seen so far.
Yeah, I would presume they might be the only two. Like if there's some sort of survey group. So,
but there was that huge fleet there at the very first shot. So
that's true.
Did they just break off and land there just because that was their designated spot or whatever?
Maybe. It could even be like they're all around the planet of Dulcus, so...
Yeah, one of them did say that he thought they should have gone on to Epsilon 4 or whatever.
Yeah, so maybe they're like going through an entire system of planets.
And they're looking for radiation? They're looking for some sort of fuel?
I'm not... Well, we don't fully know that. I couldn't tell, I thought there was one point where they said... Oh, well, all of this, that explains the radiation. But if they just got here and there was no radiation, did they take away the radiation? Is the radiation only for them now? Or they just... Maybe it's there, but only they can really sense it now. So there's something going on with that.
Yeah.
So.
And they are going to bore into the crust for some purpose.
For something, yeah.
All right. Well, let's watch episode 2.
Oh, they've used that visor before.
I was going to say, where have we seen that?
I think in the Ice Warriors.
You ever travelled in a capsule before?
I can't say that I have. How do they work?
Don't know, can't stand the things myself. Hey, you asked a question.
Yes.
There you are, Bella. That proves it. This girl's got an inquiring mind. She can't possibly come from Dulcus.
It will be for your father to decide.
Inquiring minds want to know.
As soon as your friends return, I will dial for the capital Kelly if you don't mind.
I see. Frightened I might disappear, eh?
It has been known, hasn't it, Cully?
It'd be a joke if it happened this time, though, wouldn't it?
They were doing so well with their computers, but it just doesn't work.
This is now agreed? Subject, of course, to the approval of Director Senate.
Well, I'm sure the director will approve our decision after all sufficiently considered the claims of our
Really, gentlemen, we have been debating this matter for several months. I don't wish to hurry.
Bunch of old sedentary men.
What do you hope to gain by this foolishness? But it's not. I told you when we spoke on the Vision Link. 3 people have been killed, a spacecraft has landed, radioactivity has disappeared, and there are robots on that island. Now, I may have a pretty inventive mind, but I wouldn't have dreamt up that lot now, would I?
I don't doubt you will confirm all this.
You're right. Yes, I'm all right.
What are you up to? Boss was easy. An unintelligent enemy is far less dangerous than an intelligent one, Jamie. Eh? Just act stupid. Do you think you can manage that? Why, it's easy.
Attach force units.
We now know that the effects of an atomic explosion last for 172 years.
Wise?
Oh, I dare say our atomic experts could provide a reason, but it seems pointless to spend time searching for reasons to prove facts. A fact is a truth.
But the spacecraft that's
Oh,
coming...
This is a weird thing of... They do accept facts, and that sounds really nice. But they're not going further than that.
So they had to get either teenagers or young people or small people to go inside the quarks because they are very small.
Oh, yeah.
Recharge.
Good job.
Self-charging?
Yeah. Something like that.
Attract!
part 2. I should actually... Shit. Okay. Oh, that's right. This is a 5-parter. Okay. I was just making sure. I was like, I'm pretty sure this isn't a 4-parter, but let me check to be sure. But yeah, it's a 5-parter. That's right. So
That seems weird.
yeah, so we're doing 3 today, 2 next time.
Okay.
Should have made that clear from the beginning. Anywho, well, that's part 2.
Well, again, the story is very interesting. They're introducing the fact that the Dulcians take everything as fact, but yet don't go beyond that. There's no interpretation of the facts.
Oh, yeah.
And the Dominators themselves seem to be somewhat schizophrenic. You know, you got the one guy who's eager to destroy everything, and the other guy who says, no, we have to investigate. You know, we have to figure out what we can use and what we can't, and don't waste the energy on destroying them. So,
Yeah.
Again, kind of an interesting setup, but I, again, can't really tell where it's going.
Yeah. It's also interesting, you know, when they mention when they're scanning Jamie and it's like, oh, he only has 1 heart. And I was like, oh, maybe this will be when we finally get that the Doctor has 2 hearts. But then they say, oh, the Dulcians have 2 hearts. I'm still wondering if that's the case. Like, maybe they'll introduce that, but I'm not sure. It's entirely possible. Yeah, because I guess if they do end up scanning, like if they end up scanning the Doctor later, then they might find that. So, because he should at least be different from Jamie and then the Dulcians.
Yeah.
And then again, it is just such a strange, like, you know, they are so concerned with facts. And, like, and just everything, that's how they live by facts. And when you put it like that, it's like, oh, well, that seems really nice, you know? Like, people that they just completely believe it's a fact, therefore it is the truth. That's just great. They don't go any further than that, and that's where it's like, oh, well, you kind of have to go a little further than that to find those facts.
There are a lot of people today who accept what they think are facts, but in fact are not facts.
Well, yeah,
They're
like
alternative facts.
Well, and that's the thing, you know, where it's like, oh, these people accept the actual facts, and that's why I was thinking, like, oh, well, that's just really nice that they accept actual facts, but then, yeah, they just don't go further. So it's like it's a step up from that, but not fully like where they need to be.
Yeah,
so.
the thing about where they said it proves conclusively that radioactivity dies out in 172 years. No, radioactivity takes like 5,000 to 10,000 years to completely disappear.
Yeah.
So they're not investigating what caused it to drop so precipitously in these last couple of days.
They're taking everything at face value. Yeah. So yeah, it's a strange. I mean, they're not scientists really. They're just sort of they look. That's it. So
yeah, they're recording facts but not interpreting them.
Right.
And I'm really trying to figure out where this is coming from, because, you know, late 60s, I don't specifically know of any kind of, you know, current events that would have precipitated this.
Yeah. Or if, like, maybe with, like, the council that they had there and the whole thing with Cully, like, maybe that was sort of from something, but I'm not sure. Yeah. You know, just the endless debates of the Dulcian Council and Cully, the boy who cried wolf, apparently.
Yeah.
So
now, and again, I don't know that there was any particular special issue that the House of Commons and the House of Lords would have been debating at this time. There was kind of a recession in the late 60s and early 70s, but that doesn't seem to play in here. Again, all we know is that the Dominators are looking for some kind of resource that they're, again, haven't yet drilled for, but they are setting it up for. So
yeah.
I guess we just have to figure out what's going on in, hopefully, the next episode, so we can, you know, carry over into next week to find out what the conclusion is.
Yeah. So.
Oh, come on, keep it. No, you know I'm not lying.
Kick it. You know, I bet they probably can't get back up if they're knocked down.
Cully, how fast can these quarks move?
Young lady, I cannot allow you to incite my pupils. Resistance will only lead to violence.
Resistance is futile.
Leads to slavery. We must fight. How about you, Cully?
You can't be Panda.
No.
Mixed submission would be humiliating.
Continue working.
Now, having a menacing female voice on the quarks would be interesting. But again, they just sound like little squeak toys.
Well,
Yes.
Place it on one side. Reminder, continue. Working.
man, it's like the Ten Commandments.
I was actually just thinking the same thing.
We're not used to manual labor on Dalkis.
Well, I mean, how did buildings get made?
I guess they're living in the ones from hundreds of years ago.
Man. Well, that was some good architecture then.
If these aliens and their robots are aggressive, and as yet this is not a fact, but if they are, then we can either fight.
Fight! Silence! Tensor.
Fight, submit, or flee.
Oh, no, flee to the west.
Well, those are your only options.
Flight is impossible. We have nowhere to hide. And submission to what?
Who knows?
So we can do nothing?
Nothing, except wait.
I think I'm beginning to see where this is coming from.
Did you look down there? That's the Rhine building. Hello. What can you see?
Has he just had a telescope this whole time?
Those were probably very warm.
Yeah. And very difficult to go up slopes.
Stop.
Boom.
Good shot.
Left the feet.
Destroy!
Stop.
Task completed.
All right, so 1960s, Vietnam War.
Mm-hmm.
Rising pacifist movement. The hippies being part of that. But there was a whole group of people who literally said, we must not engage in any kind of aggression at all. Whereas other people said, and this, again, I may be stretching this, but, you know, when you have a force like the Soviet Union or Communist China who do not believe in pacifist ideals, then you've got people warning that if you try to stay pacifist in the face of aggressors like Russia and China, then this is what's going to happen to you. They're going to dominate you. So, again, that's the closest thing that I can think of from this time period. And, of course, they're here obviously taking it to the logical extreme.
Yeah.
But that's finally kind of making sense. Although, again, I don't know specifically that the Russians and the Chinese were trying to take anything away from the West, you know, oil and gas or coal or whatever. But again, that would make the kind of logical base here for these two sides to play out. And again, it only came to me when Tensa came in and said, you know, we have only, you know, three options, and we can't fight them. We cannot hide, so we must submit to them. And there are people who thought that the peace movement would basically force the West to surrender to communism. So again, I may be stretching that way further than they meant it to go here, but that's kind of the vibe that I got here in this last episode.
Yeah. I could see that, especially with mainly Zoe and Jamie's interactions with the council. Like, they seemed, and I guess maybe more Jamie's as well. It was definitely a, hey, you know, why aren't you taking any action? You know, you're not even trying. You're just sitting here and you're talking. You're not doing anything. You know, we should do something, but you're not doing anything. And I guess a bit with Zoe and the others, where she's immediately trying to think, okay, how can we get rid of these quarks? How do we get out of this? Well, the other three are like, oh no, we shouldn't do anything. Let's just do what they say. And Cully does get on board with what she wants to do, but even he needs to take a little convincing too.
Yeah.
So
now, does this vaguely remind you of the original Dalek serial where the Khaleds were very peaceful, and wasn't it Ian who had to literally force them to realize that there are some things worth fighting for, where he provoked the one guy about his wife or his woman or something, and basically said, if you don't do this, they will kill your people or they will wipe out your civilization.
Yeah, which, when you put it like that, well, and also, it does sort of remind me of the Thals in that, because they're all wearing stupid clothes and stuff. But yes, that does sort of, that is true, in that, it would have been, in the Dalek serial, because I also remember that being a point in the original movie as well. So yeah, it was something. It was something like that. I don't fully remember like what the thing was, but Ian did basically. I think he got himself punched basically.
Yeah.
So,
and again, that literally, and hang on, here comes a World War II reference. That's also what happened in some places. You know, the United States tried to stay out of World War II for so long because, as you know, a lot of people said, it was just like World War I. It had nothing to do with the United States. But at some point, somebody has to understand that if you allow the aggression to stand in Europe, what then will stop the Nazis or the fascists or whoever from then ultimately developing the technology to come across the Atlantic or the Pacific and attack the United States on its home soil? So even if you are a pacifist nation, if you prefer to stay out of it because it really has nothing to do with you, ultimately you have to realize that we are global. We cannot isolate ourselves anymore like we had done in the 17th and 18th and even 19th centuries. In the 20th century, you've got to understand that, the pebble that drops in the pond over here is going to ripple ultimately to affect you.
Yeah. Wasn't that a Star Trek episode, like an original series episode? Like, they went back in time and...
Yes.
There was like someone who was like, oh, well, she's supposed to die.
Sitting on the edge of forever. Yes.
Yeah, and if you let her live, she will actually like champion the peace movement, but then that will make the United States lose in World War II.
Yes.
So Kirk basically just had to let her die or something like
that.
It was a great episode.
Yes. One of their best, and if I recall correctly, it was like Harlan Ellison, who was one of the great science fiction writers of the 60s, wrote that episode.
Yeah. So...
But even though it does seem to be that somewhat of a recycle of the original Dalek, they're making an interesting take on it.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. I mean, thinking back to it now, it's like it does definitely feel like that sort of, Thals and Dalek sort of situation we had originally, but it feels different enough. And I like how, I think maybe one thing that helps it is the fact that they're, among the Dulcins, there is Cully, who is trying to, come up with these different ideas and stuff. And even the Thals, I feel like, while they were sort of, content staying away from the Daleks at all costs, that was just sort of it. Whereas the Dulcians, it's not just that they're trying to stay away from aggression and stuff, but they're trying to stay away from, like, a whole lot of stuff. Yeah. Like, in peacetime, they've really just sort of lost all sense of curiosity and questioning everything.
Curiosity, because here is the fact. We will accept it that radiation stops after 172 years. It's like somebody just got to go slap these dudes and go, what made it stop? Did it stop naturally? See, that's the thing. You can say it has stopped, but the question, and again they were talking about, this person can't be a Dulcian, he's asking questions, is why did it stop? Did it stop naturally? You have to investigate. You have to be curious. Did it stop on its own, or was there an outside force that stopped it? So, again, a very interesting kind of twist on that original Dalek story.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and it's also interesting because when we started off the episode, the Dominators were talking about, oh, well, maybe we could make a slave force out of the natives that are here, and if they're too aggressive, then we'll just destroy them. And I thought, okay, so that's going to be our sort of theme going through the episode. But that's honestly just sort of taken a back seat. Like, that's just why they're here, and obviously they're trying to find whatever material they're after, but the main focus is more on the Dulcians and their, like, philosophies and stuff like that, or I guess maybe lack thereof, technically. So yeah. So let's see. We also had I guess sort of like the original Dalek serial, there are robots in this one.
Yeah.
But they've split the Daleks between the Dominators and the Quarks, and the Quarks are not as good looking as the Daleks.
No, but again, this to me seems a good idea that was not incredibly well executed.
Yeah.
Obviously, because the Quarks can do things the Daleks can't. After all, the first time we saw the Daleks, once they got off the static electricity floor, they didn't function. But these guys can seem to go everywhere. But you're right, that's an interesting point. You've got the Dominators themselves, who tend to be the very aggressive personality of the Daleks, and then the Quarks are the physical representation.
Yeah. They just don't have the budget to live up to make decent enough suits. But, it's... I guess it's a unique design. It's just sort of like, all right, that's just kind of weird. But let's see. And then we had the Island of Death, which I guess you're not supposed to go to unless you have a permit. But Cully was just taking people there. He just had a thing.
Because it was an adventure,
Yeah. I thought it was a little interesting, though. They say, like, okay, well, we didn't take a capsule here. We specifically sailed here on that weird-looking boat or whatever. But then they say, oh, well, we can't go out there because there's too much radiation. We can't go out there without protective suits. And I thought, well, you traveled all this way and you didn't bring protective suits?
Well, I don't know that Cully was actually expecting to land on the island. Remember, something happened and they ran aground.
Yeah.
And he was saying, we need to get out of here because, according to what we know, this island is radioactive.
Yeah.
So I don't know that he expected to land there. This was a complete accident. I hate to make this reference, but almost a Gilligan's Island sort of thing, where they land on the shore and figure that they can't get off. But then when they check there's no radiation, they check the computers, they said, well, then why don't we go out and see what's going on? Cully was against that, if you remember. He said, you guys don't go out there because we have no idea. This is supposed to be radioactive, and I don't know why it isn't, so this could be very dangerous.
Yeah, so I guess that is, even though, the people that he was taking, they were at least adventurous enough to go, but they weren't thinking about, like, okay, if there's no, radiation or anything, why? And so he was already like, okay, we need to figure this out. Why is there no radiation? There should be. So...
And again, we still haven't figured out why the radiation is gone. Did the Dominators do it, or did the TARDIS do it? But hopefully in the last 2 episodes we'll hear something about that.
Because they did mention, like, oh, well, perhaps your machine basically attracted all the radiation like a magnet, but the Doctor said, well, it could do that, but I would have seen a reading on the TARDIS console. So it's entirely possible that it's that, or just... I would imagine it must be something to do with the Dominators, because they showed up first. Yeah. So...
Yeah, some kind of dampening field.
Yeah, something like that, probably. Let's see. We did have the intelligence test, which it was clever and, well, I guess it was intelligent of the Doctor to fake being an idiot, basically. That was good, because it does get him off their radar, basically. Yeah. So...
and they probably tested Jamie because they figured the Doctor was weaker, being an older man, and thought Jamie would be the specimen that they should look at because he would be useful as a physical slave.
Yeah, and then once they saw, once they scanned over Jamie, they didn't need to go to the Doctor because they thought he was the same species. So they're like, well, he's just going to be just a weaker version of this guy. So I also like that moment of, well, Jamie, we just need to play dumb. Do you think you can do that? It's like, oh, yeah, it's easy. Yeah, sure.
That'll be easy.
Yeah. So, let's see. So we did have the council, which was interesting, and just all the deliberations and just the constant chatter and stuff. That was all interesting, and as well as the director Senex, and like his relationship with his son and everything. The director did kind of look familiar. I'm wondering.
Yeah.
Well, we could probably.
Walter Fitzgerald.
Let's see. I mean, I thought he seemed familiar, but I was gonna say you would probably.
Well, I've seen Around the World in 80 Days.
Yeah. Let's see.
I haven't seen Wuthering Heights.
Looks like that's about it for it. All right. Well. Yeah. He definitely looked familiar.
Yeah.
So. But yeah, he was interesting. I guess. I mean, it's an interesting sort of thing with Cully because it's like, all right, this is he knows his son. He knows he's basically the boy who cried wolf, and he's always got his imagination going. So it is difficult at this moment when Cully is telling the truth about everything. It's like, okay, sure, there's aliens and stuff, but eventually they do sort of come around. It's like, okay, clearly the Doctor and Zoe and Jamie, they have to be from another world. And again, it's just one of those things where it's like, oh, well, I guess you must be from another world. All right, then. And it's like, well, it's not a bigger shock to you. It's like, because there were the other guys who were like, oh, it's been disproven that there could be any other life on any other planet. And it's like, well, first off, who disproved that? Who was thinking, like, you know what, I wonder if there's life on other planets? Because that person clearly... was a thinker like Cully, like everyone.
But again, you could also look at that like the people from our Middle Ages, who looked at the moon and, the legend goes that people thought it, because of the way it looked, it might be made out of green cheese, and it wasn't until Galileo and some of the others using the telescope that they said, no, the things that you're seeing are mountains and lakes and valleys are a place where lakes used to be. And so, again, a very primitive society, although they don't seem to be that primitive, but they have turned back in on themselves so much that they look at something and just, like you said before, accept it completely at face value.
Yeah.
So we know that there are other planets out there, but we just assume that because they're not like us, then there's no life on them.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's a very interesting thing. But then, again, as soon as they're faced with, oh, well, there must be life on other planets. Well, okay then. And it's like, well, don't you want to know about that? Are you curious about it? Nope. That just is.
That we accept it.
Yeah. So
it is what it is.
It's one of those things where it's like they accept. It's a weird thing because we've gone through so many episodes where it's like, oh, you're not from space and time or all this sort of stuff. And we have to just keep going until eventually they come around and they accept it and everything. So it's so weird to have a reverse of that where they accept it immediately, but that's almost as infuriating because they accept it and we just move on. It's like, oh, well, you want to know about this stuff or... Yeah.
Well, I mean, it just seems a little odd that, when Zoe... and Jamie and the Doctor show up, and they're not wearing Dulcian clothing.
Yeah.
Where would they have gotten that clothing? You
yeah.
know, if everybody on the planet is the same, that would be the first giveaway. It's like, you say you're from somewhere else? Well, that must be true, because you don't look like us.
Yeah, you're not wearing a weird shower curtain.
Over your toga.
Yeah, it was very weird. I mean, like, the closest... Because Director Senix, he also had, like, sleeves. Like, it seems like the very important people have sleeves. But like the way some of them were like carrying, it's like, oh, this does sort of seem like a bit toga-ish, but at the same time, you just look and it's like, oh, this is just sort of weird, you know?
Yeah. Again, I think I understand what they were trying to do. They wanted not just the flat toga, but something with pleats in it, but probably didn't have enough time to take the toga to do that, so they simply added this folded shower curtain and gave them a belt and tacked it onto their shoulders and went, okay, that'll do. But again, to us, 50 years down the line, we're looking at going, that's a questionable costume choice.
Yeah. Well, and we're looking at the Dominators and be like, those are ridiculous shoulder pads, you know?
But they are also very menacing looking.
Yeah. Like, it does give them a bit more bulk and a bit more height.
Yeah.
So,
and it makes you wonder, are their actual shoulders supposed to be in there, or is this just something that is part of their uniform? Because if it was part of, that would make them very, very strong, because they would have that incredible upper body strength.
Yeah, that's true. Let's see. What Well, we still don't know what exactly the Dominators are here for. They're just looking for some sort of material.
And didn't Senex say there isn't anything that's worthwhile on the planet? So
yeah, at least not to the Dulcians. Yeah. So presumably, whatever is here was just of no value to the non-thinking Dulcians. Yeah. So,
and again, that's somewhat of a stretch, but it's kind of the parallel when the Europeans came to North America. Very specifically looking for land because they wanted to farm, whereas the Native Americans looked at the land and said, why should we need to farm? The Great Spirit has provided us with all the food that we need. They were still hunters and gatherers, hunting the buffalo, and gathering the wild, fruits and vegetables and nuts and seeds and berries and roots and stuff like that, whereas the Europeans hadn't done that in thousands of years and couldn't understand why the natives thought that was better than having your own domesticated animals and your own domesticated crops. And that's one of the reasons, that's one of the biggest reasons that the two cultures clashed was over land, because the Europeans said, the way you do this is so primitive and so useless, surely you'll want to become like us. And the natives said, no, we've lived like this for thousands of years and this is who we are. So,
yeah. It's an interesting thing with this episode that you do sort of have that European native meeting with the Dominators and the Dulcians, but then you add on top of that this sort of peaceful Vietnam sort of angle to it as well for the actual conflict between them. Yeah. So it's definitely an interesting combination, and again, that's sort of that was not part of the original Dalek serial. It was more just the sort of the original Dalek serial was the peaceful Thals and everything like that, but also just surviving the Daleks that were there. Yeah. The only reason there was conflict was because they were Daleks, basically. Yeah. So, and then the last thing I wrote down was Tensa and the options. I thought it was interesting that it's okay, in our very peaceful society, they do have a chairman for emergencies. But they do say he mainly deals with natural disasters, fires and earthquakes and stuff like that. But I did also think okay, so this guy specifically deals with emergencies. Boy, they could have used this guy on the wheel in space, as opposed to whatever the Jarvis guy, who ended up becoming catatonic because there were too many emergencies. Yeah. So it's one of those things where it's well, at least they have a guy, even if he's not ready for aliens and stuff. They at least have someone. Yeah. Of course, then he brings up the three options that they have, which are really the only three options that exist, which are fight, flight, or submit. So, but yeah, that's basically all I got. You got anything else?
I got nothing.
Well, next time around, we'll be doing the last two parts of the Dominators. So it'll be a nice, presumably shorter, unless we talk longer, episode.
Which we tend to do.
Yeah, it can happen. But yeah, we'll only be doing 2 episodes next week for this nice 5-parter. It is a little strange that it's okay, so we only have 2 episodes left. And I'm starting to think it's so weird because I think in terms of 6-parters now, because we've had so many that it's okay, well, is that going to make anything different, or is it just going to still be... I'm sure it'll be fine once we see it.
Makes you wonder if there were 6 episodes and they edited 1 down, but it doesn't seem to, because, there's nothing extraneous that we've seen in these 3 scripts so far.
I suppose it's possible, because Planet of Giants was originally 4 parts, but they cut it down to 3. Yeah. And that was a really good 3-parter. Yeah. So yeah, it could be that, especially since we've had 6-parters pretty much since pretty much all through season 5. I think the only one that wasn't a 6-parter was Tomb of the Cybermen. So yeah, I don't know. I'd be curious of if that is the case for this one. Yeah. And I think we have a couple 5-parters. It's 1 or 2. Yeah, the next one after this is 5, but then I think the next one after that is 8. So I think it's these 2 are 5-parters for some reason.
Now, on the 8-parter, we're going to do 4 and 4 or 3, 3 and 2?
Probably 4 and 4.
Okay.
And then eventually, I know this season ends with a 10-parter. So
more.
I think the idea right now is to do 4, and then 2 to get through that one, but that's at the end of the season. We've got a ways to go. So, but yeah, that is basically it. With all that being said, we're Alex and Dad from 7th Hour Films, and we will see you guys next time. Take care. Alright guys, thanks for watching this video. If you want to watch more of our Doctor Who classic reactions, you can click on the playlist, you can subscribe if you haven't done that already, and be sure you hit that notification bell. You can support me on Patreon and follow me on social media, links below in the description. See you guys later.